I always find it funny how humbling DEXAs can be. I had a patient who came to me a while ago who was about early 30s, and he was pretty healthy. He was in reasonable shape. He was exercising regularly, and he kind of rightly wanted to come just to make sure that everything was okay from a longevity point of view. So, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And what I said, like every patient, we should start with a DEXA scan. And he came in with the confidence and maybe to some extent arrogance of Conor McGregor. He came in balding, expecting this just to be a formality, going to the scanner, you had to deal with nothing. And lo and behold, he was very humbled very quickly, because what happened was he ended up to be in the worst 20% for visceral adipose tissue, so visceral fat, which is one of the big predictors of inflammation, of metabolic disease, of essentially having it's essentially fat around the organ. So it releases a lot of chemicals that do all sorts of stuff to your hormone balance and your insulin resistance. It's just generally a really bad thing to have to be in that sort of percentile. So that then prompted us to go and do some other measurements, such as an oral glucose tolerance test, which is where you take someone's blood when they're fasted. So you measure their insulin and their sugar, so their blood glucose. And then what you do is you go and give them a really big dose of glucose. So you give them 75 grams of glucose. It's almost like one of those big bottles of Lucozade. So then what you do is you measure every 30 minutes after that. So you give them the sugary drink, measure 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and 90 minutes after. And lo and behold, this guy also had very, very early signs of type 2 diabetes. I'm talking like 10, probably 20 years before any signs would show up. But it just goes to show how somebody who seems normal feels like, I exercise, they say they eat right, but there are some hidden risks behind there. But the problem with this is that it can put people on a path towards diabetes, but like I say, 10 years down the line. And these are the very, very early signs, but something people would never check unless they did it really early, right? So this is why a DEXA scan is so good, because it's so confronting. It's so it shows some hidden things, and also psychologically there's no denying it. So it turns out that this patient was actually me, and I was the arrogant one who thought I was fine. I did, there's body impedance, and I just weigh myself on the scale and do like my body fat percentage with calipers, and because they're so unreliable, I would just kind of not worry about it too much, and I'd say, well, yeah, it's not great, and the measurements weren't great, but I would actually just kind of hide behind the ambiguity almost and say, well, yeah, because they're not reliable, I can just throw the whole thing out and not look at anything. But I'll show you some of my DEXA data from this, because there are a few things that I recommend people look at, because I'll get it up now and I'll show you. It can be quite overwhelming because you get a lot of numbers thrown at you. I'll share the screen and show you exactly what's there. On the left, you get everything from your fat mass, your lean body mass, your total mass, and the body fat percentage, and it's broken down by limb basically. And then on the right, you get your total body fat. That's one of the things that I look at. So you can see that I'm nearly 25%, which is, do you see that AM38? That means that I am age matched. So basically for people my age, I am in the the bottom 38 percentile. So it's good, it's not terrible, but you want to kind of be a bit lower than that. Then the other really important thing that we look at is the VAT. It's not a tax thing, it's visceral adipose tissue, which basically means visceral fat. And that we want to be, again, as low as possible, really. What happens is your body can store fat, and then once that capacity is used up, it then moves on to the organs, which is your VAT, right? So mine's 417 grams. Again, that's in the worst 20% of people my age and height. That's not good. And again, that's a big sign that inflammation's coming, that we are basically en route to develop insulin resistance. It messes with your hormones. For women, it can be associated with PCOS and all sorts of other things. So it's really important to get as low as possible. Then there are two things that I look at really, because looking at muscle mass is fine, but 50 kilos of muscle mass in a 6'4" person versus 50 kilos of muscle mass or lean body mass in a 5'5" person is a very different story. So there are ways that you can kind of equate for that, which is by what you do is you can do the FFMI, so the fat-free mass index, which is basically all of your lean body mass divided by your height squared. Or what you can do is your appendicular lean mass index. Now that's doing exactly the same, except for it's only taking it from the arms and legs, because in the body, what a DEXA measures is your bone, and bone density, but bone, your fat, and then your lean mass. So lean mass is everything that isn't bone and fat. So that isn't necessarily always muscle, especially when you're doing the whole body. In the trunk, you have organs. Sometimes people's organs are swollen, especially if they're fasting. It can mess with that whole they can shrink, or it can mess with the whole lean mass ratio, right? So the best way to look at it is in your arms and legs, because everything that isn't bone and fat is pretty much muscle in the arms and legs. So it's a good way to just isolate it and really understand how muscly you are. So with this, for my age matched average, my appendicular lean mass index was 9.11, which puts me in the 65th percentile. So, a little bit above average, but not particularly great. So this is a really important test because it was so humbling for me, and it's so confronting. Because like I said, before looking at this and having, cold hard data that you can't deny, I was in denial. I was looking at other data thinking, oh, well, it's not reliable, so I won't take any action. So this was the first thing, the lead domino, that made me actually start looking at this and take action. And I would encourage you to do the same, because it is one of the biggest catalysts for whether you're trying to lose weight, whether you're trying to put on fat. It is a really great place to start because it will get you going. One of the other things that you can do is that we have a free app to help, because once you measure this, you need to start tracking. So visceral for adipose tissue, one of the best proxies for it, the best things that you can measure at home, is your waist circumference. So we've developed an app that helps you track some of the long-term stuff that you get at the doctors, but also some of the shorter-term stuff that you can do daily or weekly that you can measure yourself at home, and it'll give you reminders to make sure that you're tracking what you need to stay on course. So if you want, it's a free app that you can download by clicking in the link in the bio. We also have, probably the most important element is accountability. So we've started an accountability club where we meet once a week. One is a live call. The other one is a offline call that people can do if they can't attend. And we just make sure that people are doing what they say they do so that they remain on track for whatever it is they're trying to achieve. If you want to find out a little bit more about how you can improve your long-term health, check out this video here. But I would love it if you could subscribe to the channel, because our mission is to cut through all the longevity biohacking BS and give you some of the most useful information to help you feel better today and live longer tomorrow. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in one of those videos.